Okay, yodel yodel, back again. Time to do some painting. It's been a week and this purple worm is coming along. So, oh my, oh this is nice. What ad have they? Her hair looks so fantastic in 3 minutes. Pro V, wow, do I really want that? I have no hair to actually wash, so it won't help me in the slightest. Okay, I've just watched the ad that plays just before this this live stream. Sound is working fine. Okay, so look, the start time, if you're rewatching this live stream, will be down in the description. Otherwise, if you're part of the live stream, this is my day off. This is where I just sort of do my own thing. This is not your normal format where I talk and then you get... I do a presentation and then you get to sort of chat with me later. You can chat along with me as you see fit. You got a truck ad, Darren. Oh man, I think I would have preferred the truck ad over the hair ad. The Pro V wasn't going to really work for me. I haven't very much hair left, which is half the reason why I wear hats. When you see my face, that is. Well, obviously not today. Okay, anyway, let's get started into this. Oh, by the way, I do not chop down these live streams because these things are way too long to be considering that. Hi, welcome to HowtoDandD. My name is Fred Wheeler and today I'm going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons while I paint my purple worm, which has been coming along nicely. It's been a lot of work and I'm obviously going to talk about anything you want to talk about, but I'm happy to talk about anything related to Dungeons and Dragons. It actually doesn't really matter too much, but Dungeons and Dragons would work. Whether you are a dungeon master or a player, I'm happy to chat about that sort of thing. So the Gale Force 9 Purple Worm, you will be able to find a link to buying this thing if you want to. You can't get it anywhere else other than Gale Force 9's website, which is utter rubbish. But there is a link down there if you feel inclined. It's a special order. You can't just go and buy it off the shelf unless you're incredibly lucky and you manage to find somebody who's selling it. So this is what I've been working on, and this is like video number 5 or something like that. So yes, here we go. Let's get started. And by all means, you are welcome to chat along with me, talk about whatever you like. Okay, so painting time. I just wanted to say, for those of you who are not necessarily aware yet, I will post it up on the community tab that I'm probably going to take a little bit of a break from the schedule I've been normally running. Normally I would do, on my Sunday, I would do a sort of like a Dungeon Master guide on the Lost Mine of Phandelver, which they'll keep happening, the Lost Mine of Phandelver Dungeon Master guide, and then once a month I do a Dungeon Master Q&A. We are going to probably tackle the underneath of this sucker. I feel like that's probably the smartest thing to do right now. And I just want to just check something. It's very hard to see underneath. Yes, I absolutely feel like, yeah, definitely going to go with the brown and then go with the grey underneath. So we're going to do that today. So we'll skip across over to that. I know my miniature's upside down. I will see if I can turn it around so you get a better view. Of course, now I can't actually paint it, so that's not going to work either. Side on. Compromise, other side. Can you see anything? Probably not. We'll figure it out. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Okay, cool. So yes, there will be a slight adjustment to the sort of thing that I am doing on my channel. The combat tutorials will remain. They'll only be done on my day off, and the Dungeon Master guides on the Lost Mine of Phandelver or the Q&As once a month are going to be done on my day off rather than during the week, so that I can look for a job. So while I still have some of the year left and there's a possibility of getting out of the job I have now, I'm going to take that opportunity, because there will be no opportunity in January. Next year, the beginning of January, there'll just be no work anywhere. So I don't want to be stuck where I am. And then of course we'll go back to what I was doing before, more than likely. Okay, so hopefully you can see roughly what I'm doing. I'm just sort of painting my grey on here underneath the jaw. I was watching a couple of people's couple of videos that people had put out. So yeah, feel free to pick up your own miniatures and paint along while I'm painting. You don't need to chat along with me if you don't want to. But that's part of the benefits, right, of me painting and being here and doing it live, is you get to talk. Surprisingly, I'm very talkative, usually. But I was watching some of the interesting feedback from Don't Stop Thinking, which I have to say, he makes really good content and makes a lot of sense. But I was feeling like the video he'd put out on anime using anime to sort of improve your combats, it's very hard to actually relay and make combat super interesting in Dungeons and Dragons. You can do lots of descriptions, obviously that certainly helps, and be descriptive and use a narrative and you know, have the character say things that are interesting and sort of build on the scene. But you know, if the dice fall a particular way, it's all going to be over and done with. That's just the nature of Dungeons and Dragons being a very random game that uses dice, and the dice is a 20-sided dice, so it's got a lot of possible outcomes, and there's no way of really controlling that unless you fudge everything. I don't really fudge dice anymore. But it started me thinking about my Dungeon Master screen and why I keep using my Dungeon Master screen, because I am perfectly aware that the Dungeon Master screen is a barrier between me and the players. And I do that deliberately, I realise, because it's not so much that I don't want them to see stuff, because obviously sometimes there are things that I don't want them to see, and it does create a barrier. I don't dispute that at all. But what I have found interesting is I still have players every once in a while who will see my notes, because if there's no Dungeon Master screen, and I've done that before, I've run games without a Dungeon Master screen, they will use that information. Now, I would like to think that my players will not metagame, but that just doesn't happen that way. You know, it's like anything, even the best players will have their weak moments, and they can't control everything they do consciously. Sometimes subconsciously, even though they think they are not metagaming, they are in fact metagaming, and using the information they have discovered by reading my notes, because they're all very, very capable of doing that. They'll use that. But that's not really the only reason I use a Dungeon Master screen, I realised. It's actually so that, because I don't fudge dice, so I don't need to hide my dice. In fact, what I do is I tend to specifically pick out dice rolls that I want them to see me roll. And the reason for doing that is so that it creates more tension. I find that if you show the players certain dice rolls and hide other dice rolls, it does create tension. The other reason is I want them to think that I'm hiding stuff from them when I'm in fact hiding nothing, because it builds paranoia amongst the players about what will potentially happen. So I find that actually quite useful in my game, having that element there. And that's probably why I still have my Dungeon Master screen. Most of the rules I know pretty well now, but there are, I mean, let's get real. Whoever remembers every single condition and all the elements to the conditions? I don't. And I've done videos on the topics. You still forget them. They are things that I still wind up looking up. So hence, I still have my Dungeon Master screen. And I'm sure there are many reasons why people keep them. You know, whether it's so they have interesting or useful information there, or so they can hide stuff, or so that they can pretend to hide something. I think that Dungeon Masters who have been playing for some time often use the Dungeon Master screen as a way of pretending to hide something they're not actually hiding. It's all smoke and mirrors, remember? Smoke and mirrors. And you are presenting something that's not actually there. It's all part of the imagination. Okay, that's working out all right. Paint is flying nicely today. It's quite a warm day here. Oh, be careful, Fred, be careful. Let's flip this round here so I get a better angle and just attack it from that side there. There we go. Ta-da! I imagine that there'll be a few people who are getting sick and tired of me painting this purple worm. But yeah, I'm going to take a break from doing the painting and the crafting videos over December, just because I just don't think it's going to work out. I want to get another job, and I'll come back to it in January. There'll be no work, and so painting and crafting will all be fine then. Plenty of time to get that done, and there'll be no jobs whatsoever. What's that, Darren? Paranoia among the players can be a good thing. Yeah, I don't want, usually I don't do that sort of thing or try to build up paranoia in new people, but people who've been playing with me for some time, I'm trying to because players figure out dungeon masters. That's the thing you've got to realize is that players will figure out your play style. And John Shackle, one of my friends who's played at my table many times, he's figured out my play style way too well. He knows usually when I'm pretending and faking. He knows when I'm lying. He knows when I'm creating things on the fly. He's read my body language and my way of doing things so well. It's very hard to surprise him. And I think that being a dungeon master is very much about surprise. Okay, this is going to be impossible for me to get at unless I change the angle here. Okay, we'll flick that round to there. I don't know if you can necessarily see what I'm doing, but it will allow me to get a better angle on it. So because your players will learn your dungeon master style, you have to come up with different strategies for dealing with that. And that's why I retain my dungeon master screen. It's also really helpful for hanging things off, like notes and initiative order. You know, you can have an initiative board if you like. I've actually got some stick on whiteboard stuff that you can make your own small sized sort of whiteboard for tracking initiative, and just hand it to one of the players to do all that grunt work. But I was thinking about doing that video at some point. I don't know when, but I had one of my friends give me some of the stuff to actually do a video on the topic, so it will come out eventually. It's just sitting there for now. Okay. I was also realizing that my Dungeon Master screen acts as a sort of a way of communicating to the players certain things. And one of the things I like to communicate to my players is when it's their turn. And I was also thinking about how I ran combat. At the end of Curse of Strahd, how I ran combat was very different to how I ran combat ever. I suddenly had an epiphany when it came to combat with the Curse of Strahd that, to be completely honest, it was unnecessary for me to have everybody just take a turn one after the other. Because, you know, when you say roll initiative and everybody rolls initiative, fine. What happens after that? You put all the players and your monsters into the initiative order. And if you are going first, then your monsters go first. And then after that, you have to sort of go through the process of saying, okay, Jill, okay, John, okay, Jason, it's your turn. And you can wait as they make choices. Hopefully they've already prepared their actions, but they often haven't. And then they go through the process of taking actions, rolling dice, looking up stuff, and combat really just turns into a great, huge, long process. And by the time I'd finished running Curse of Strahd, none of the combats were like that. They were so fast. And you know what I did? I had all of my players roll initiative for one combat at the very beginning of the session before we even started playing. And I got them to roll it, just put it onto a little piece of paper with their character name, and I just hung that over my Dungeon Master screen. And then once I'd done that, I then selected if I had to do initiative again, I would just take those bits of paper off and hand it to them, and they would write their initiative, new initiative, on there for me and hand it back to me, and I would just put it into order. It was like so useful to suddenly find myself not in a situation where I had to call out and ask people, okay, what's your initiative score? And then, you know, of course, you get somebody who'll call out their initiative score before you're ready to write it down. So that's always a hassle. And then I could just do my own thing. You know, I could prepare monster stats, I could check on notes, while they did all of the hard grunt work with regard to sorting out their initiative. And then they would just hand all those little tickets back to me, and I'd hang them over my Dungeon Master screen and order. But another thing I did with combat, which made it really, really fast and much easier for me to manage, and that was I would look at the initiative order. If my monsters went first, then I would take my turn. And then everybody else that was after the monster, I would just say, okay, Bob, John, Jason, David, whoever they were, you guys get to go next. Just have your turn. Whoever makes a decision and rolls some dice and does something first will get to act first. And it would turn into a bit of a competition between the players, as they would all try to sort of have their turn at exactly the same time. Now, it sounds unwieldy and like it would be disastrous for a dungeon master, but honestly, man, it made things so much easier for me. It was really, really helpful. If I get back to dungeon mastering anytime soon, which I haven't done any for a very long time, I'm going to use the same technique, because it was so freeing to be able to say, okay, go for it. We would get through one round so quickly that people were shocked just how quickly. There was no sort of sitting around and waiting. Now, if the monsters didn't get to go and somebody else got to go first, like a player, then they would have their turn. And then when I got to my monsters, I would take my turn. But often there would be like maybe one or two characters who would go before my monsters. I would just say, okay, guys, you three, since you're higher than my monsters, you go first. Have your turn. And they would do it. So I recommend that technique for dealing with initiative and getting your combats to be fast. If you really want them to be swift and interesting, because I found that they were like breakneck. A combat could be finished, 3 rounds of combat could be finished in less than 5 minutes, sometimes even less than that. That's how quick and fast it was, which means we went through more combat and we got more adventuring done. And I'm all for that. So yes, just some advice for those of you who have been trying to figure out how to speed up your combats. That's a really nice way of doing it. I might do a video on the topic specifically so you can see what it will look like and sort of demonstrate. Okay, drink of water time. Nice. Oh, okay, I'm having trouble with this spiky bit here. I'm just going to turn it around a little bit. And it's always the angle in my eyes. My hand movements, my eyes, la 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 la. And the paint's drying a little bit fast. That doesn't help either. Ah, dear. Rune Hammer. I was watching Rune Hammer. How's it going, Sneaky Shoot RPG? I am fine. How are you? What are you up to, mate? And I'm just assuming that you are a guy, and if I'm wrong, you'll correct me. La 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 la. We're just painting a miniature, and it's... My eyes are either a little weaker than they usually are today, or my hand just can't stay still. Ha! Okay, let's get that underneath there, and maybe that'll help a little bit. There we go. Ugh. The frustrations of adding paint. I was doing, what's that, sneaky shoot RPG. I'm a guy with a lot of dice. Well, yes, I used to have a lot of dice. I gave a lot of dice away to people. Just checking out some craft. Looking good. Yeah, it's getting there. It's been a long process. It has taken me many hours, I will have to say, to get this far. So I totally get it when you see some of those really nice jobs. You think, gosh, there's hours of work gone into that to get it to that point. This channel's not really, when it comes to crafting, I mean, I make my own miniatures sometimes, but this channel is not really a guide to how to paint miniatures. I just paint miniatures for the fun of it, and I figure I will paint it while other people are doing their own stuff. It's usually what tends to happen. Ooh, 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 ooh. Come on, yeah. The grey is drying up. The heat of the day is coming in. Okay. So I've got to decide which what's the next video for the Lost Mine of Phandelver. I have been tossing up whether I should cover Agatha, the Banshee, or should I do Glassstaff? I'm not really keen on doing Glassstaff, but I suppose I could. Or do I cover something like Phandalin and all the NPCs that are in there, which is like a huge video. It would probably take me forever to, probably take me 2 weeks just to get all the notes written up for that one. Or should I do Wyventor and the Orcs? I could talk about the Wyventor Orcs. This is one of the encounters, I have to say, in that adventure that has a nasty reputation for making a mess of a group of adventurers. Dear. About 12 orcs rushing at you with aggressive and with great axes. They're hard to deal with. Okay, so let's see if I can... Yeah, that's a better angle. For now, anyway. What's that, Darren? How about the Zent lady at the Miners' Exchange? That's a good point. Why not? I like the way you're thinking, Darren. You haven't said talk about all of the Phandalin NPCs. You've said talk about just one of them. I love it. It's a good idea. Yeah, I'll certainly think about that. I think it's a good idea. I'd be happy to do that. What do you got there, Sneaky Shot RPG? I played through the Goblin Cave and made some trouble in Phandalin. Anything you would enjoy doing would be keen. Okay. Are you Sneaky Shot RPG? Are you a dungeon master or are you playing in the game? If I know you're a player, I'll be careful not to reveal spoilers while I'm doing this. If you're a dungeon master, it doesn't matter, and I can talk about anything I like. And if there's anybody who is around who is a player, just be warned, there's a good chance I might talk about spoilers with regard to the Lost Mine of Phandelver. So, be warned, you have been warned. So yes, those were sort of some of the topics I had considered talking about. I know I need to do the doppelgangers. I know I need to talk about the doppelgangers because the doppelgangers are absolutely too much fun not to utilize. A bit of both. The Minds game is on hold. Oh, okay. So you do a bit of dungeon mastering and a bit of playing. Ah, well, I have to be careful about what I say then. But Darren, I think that's a good idea. Certainly talking about the mining exchange lady, it's a good topic to have. I might still just do Agatha anyway, because Agatha is one of those characters that it's more, you know, it's more an aspect of how do you deal with that particular encounter, and it's got a whole lot of information that is scattered throughout the adventure. But I also like the idea of covering just single NPCs within Phandalin. Oh man, I really have, I have to say it, I really have enjoyed doing the Lost Mine of Phandelver videos. They are my highlight of the week. Even though they're lots of work, they are the highlight. Because I don't have to talk about game mechanics. Dear. I know a channel that deals with game mechanics, and he doesn't really want to talk about them. Oh, it's just it gets a bit heavy sometimes. In fact, I will talk about game mechanics in a second, but on a different avenue, should I say. Oh my gosh, Skylar, how's it going? Hello, have been enjoying a lot of your videos. Would you ever do one about your most memorable favourite D&D experience? I think the problem with me doing one about my most memorable D&D experience is that I would have to sort of go with a montage. If I just talk about it, it's not that interesting, and trying to make it sound exciting and entertaining after the fact is much harder than, you know, what I remember in my mind and what my players remember. But yes, I would certainly consider it. I just got to get a bit more versed up in the concept of using video editing and a bit of animation, I guess. I certainly would consider it. I think it would make a good change of pace for me. So yes, I would consider it. I have actually been considering doing intro videos or trailers and teasers for some of the pre-made adventures. I just haven't figured out what I want it to look like. I want it to excite my players, but I don't want it to give away too much. So it's a little bit hard to figure out how to make that happen, you know, because let's get real, teasers and trailers tend to give away stuff, don't they? Okay, that's got that sorted. But I would certainly consider doing something like that. Darren, yeah, got it. Oh, now, with regard to game mechanics, what I've found is that my players keep looking at the character sheet. You know, they look in the player's handbook for how to do something, instead of just coming up with cool stuff, because half the time they can't, because you've got to have a feat or you've got to have a particular class. You wind up stepping on the toes of so much stuff. And I think the next time I run any kind of game, I'm going to ditch the use of feats. Now, I know that sounds terrible, but if you don't use feats, then you can use different mechanics, and anybody can try to be a grappler, or anybody can try to sort of use mechanics that are linked to doing all sorts of things, whether they be athletic in some cases. A lot of the feats give you sort of benefits, but some of them actually allow you to do certain mechanical things better, or to do them full stop, and that's one of the aspects to feats that I dislike. And I've noticed that the more and more of these optional classes and archetypes that we get, the more and more that sort of seems to permeate through the game. Alright, okay. What's that sneaky shoot RPG? It is tough to break the habit of looking at the character sheet and just telling the DM what your character is doing and letting him tell you what is needed. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think it certainly is part of the problem. And what I like is new players, because they don't know the rules, so they just, you know, when you say you can do anything, they literally figure, okay, once they figure that out, they will try to do literally anything. And they don't know what the rules are, they don't know about these feats, they don't know that they're stepping on the toes of anything, so they will try to do all sorts of things, which I think is great. I think that's a really nice aspect of the game. And I'm just going to use a bit of tan just around here to just tan up the bottom of the base. I used the grey before, but I think I also want a sort of a mix on this miniature. And there we go. It won't be much. I don't think it'll just be a sprinkling rather than a huge amount. So we get a combination of grey and brown or tan on the base. Yeah, there we go. One of the house rules. I don't really have house rules. I have variant rules that are optional for players. And one of them, I don't know if I've ever told anybody about my optional rules. I know I've said I would do videos on them, I just haven't done it yet. And that is, one of them is critical hits. One of the things that used to annoy me and some of my players is when they got a critical hit and they rolled double the dice. They didn't get a very good outcome, you know, because they rolled really low, or because they couldn't control the roll of the dice. So a critical winds up being a bit of a anticlimactic when suddenly you're rolling 1s and 2s on everything, right? So what I would do is I'd say, look, you have the option. You can use the normal critical damage rules that are in the player's handbook, but you have the option, if you want, to have maximum damage on the dice. So you don't get to double the dice, you keep the damage dice you have, but instead of rolling your damage, you can have the maximum value that you could possibly roll on those dice. So if you've got a short sword and you get a critical hit, instead of rolling 2 6-sided dice for the critical hit and adding your dexterity modifier or your strength modifier for the damage, you would just not roll the dice and you would get 6, because it's a 6-sided dice, plus your dexterity modifier or your strength modifier, because it's a finesse weapon. Same thing would apply if you were using, say, like a great axe, which is a 12-sided dice. Instead of rolling 2 12-sided dice and adding your strength modifier to determine damage, instead you don't roll any dice, and because it's a critical hit, and you get to have 12 plus your strength modifier. It flattens the maths out and it makes critical hits much more exciting and a bit more guaranteed, rather than losing that sort of excitement of, oh, I finally got the 20 and now I rolled snake eyes on my damage and it's all just turned to custard. So yes, I use that as an optional rule in my game, if my players want to use it, that is. I found a lot of players don't use it. They prefer to go with the chance of getting really high damage on 2 dice. But I know that there have been a few players who've really liked that option because they have sort of a reputation of rolling incredibly low. And it's a bummer if you roll really low all the time, right? So, okay, I think that's made a bit of a difference. Thank you, Sneaky Shot. I think it has made a big difference. I like it a lot more than I did before. Sneaky Shot. I am going to run a rule differently. Getting up from prone position is going to require a full action instead of half move. Slightly more effect on what combats can do. You know, when it comes to, I know a lot of people get confused about the prone rules and opportunity attacks and why you don't wind up with an opportunity attack if you're getting up from prone. But the concept behind prone is timing. Unlike any other game, so don't think in terms of Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 or version 3 or 4E or anything like that. Getting up from prone is more in Dungeons & Dragons 5E, and there's nothing wrong with running the rule that you're going to run Sneaky Shot, by the way, is all about timing. So the concept is you want to be able to knock something prone after they have taken their turn. So once the monster's taken their turn, that's your opportunity to try to knock them over, so that the rest of the group can move up into melee and have advantage on them. So it's all about timing. Okay, now I've done the grey there. We're going to start using some white because those teeth look very Well, they need some white, don't they? Obviously, if they don't go white, it's going to look. They're not going to look like teeth. I've been avoiding it for ages, but yeah, absolutely needs to look like, yeah, white teeth. Start there, and maybe grey it up. Actually, I think what I will do is I might go grey and then I might go white. That way I get the grey closer to the jawline. Yep, let's do that. That's the plan for today. Okay. Yes, a lot of the rules are all about timing rather than the features of, you know, you don't need to build a lot of mechanics into the game to make it work. Sometimes you just got to understand the concept behind what the designers were trying to do. I allow my players to retrain between sessions. So I don't know what other people do, but I have always allowed my players to make adjustments to their character, not in game, but before the game or after the game. The only things I don't let them change are things like their character's name. We're going back to the grey on the teeth, and then I'll go to white. But I'm probably not going to paint the entire tooth itself. It's going to be kind of sort of quick and ruthless. Okay, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on the teeth if I can help it. So yeah, my concept is that if you're going to have people play a game that's as complicated as Dungeons and Dragons, they won't really know what they want to do with their character mechanically until they've tried things out. So I allow retraining as long as they don't change their gear, their gold, and their character name. They can change absolutely everything else, which is very much like the rules for Dungeons and Dragons Adventurers League between levels 1 and 4. And I find that really helpful for dealing with power gamers, because you tend to find a lot of power gamers in events that are public, and you also can contend with people who are new to the game and make choices and then decide, oh, that was the wrong choice for me. I wanted to make some adjustments, but I've already built my character. Well, you can alleviate that stress by saying, well, it doesn't matter because you can just make adjustments. That's all right. That's just my view anyway. That's how I do it. La da da da. Chunk. Chunk. I've been checking out Dawnforge Cast, and I was looking at what was it? I was looking at passive perception and my passive check video, and I realized I hadn't actually done a video on passive perception. I'd done a passive checks, but not specifically on passive perception. And passive perception is one of those things that either a dungeon master loves or hates, and players just get confused. It's just one of those things. It's one of those mechanics which is either polarizing for a dungeon master, usually, and for a player it's just a painful and annoying and frustrating. And I know I need to definitely talk about it. One of the aspects to passive perceptions is it was designed essentially to replace the taking 10 mechanic. For those of you who remember older versions of the game, the taking 10 mechanic basically meant that you could do that. You didn't necessarily have enough time to repeat the task endlessly, but there was enough time that you could attempt to be careful about the action that you were taking. And it was essentially 10 plus your skill modifier, which is what passive perception is. It's 10 plus your perception modifier, and your perception modifier is determined by your wisdom score modifier. And if you are proficient with perception, then you get to add your proficiency bonus to your wisdom modifier, which gives you your passive perception. So yeah, or your perception score or skill, and then you add the 10, and you get your passive perception. But what was the concept behind it? It was supposed to speed up the game. So taking 10 replaced that mechanic. They never replaced the taking 20 mechanic. And you know why? You didn't need to. As a dungeon master, you can just say, well, no, you don't need to make a check. And you didn't need to spell out and say that there needed to be a taking 20 mechanic. You just said, okay, you are successful. I think the problem with doing that is that even with some of the checks and tasks that you might perform, there's still a good chance of failing, even if you took 20 and add your skill modifier. Right? So I still think the use of taking 20 in Dungeons and Dragons 5e as a variant rule is actually not a bad way to go, because it certainly alleviates some of the hassles you might have when players say, I got a 20, I got a critical. You don't get criticals for skill checks, right? That's only attack rolls. You don't get automatic success by rolling a 20. It is still possible to have a DC for a skill check that is so high that you can't be successful with it. Just taking on water, and I'm just going to try to tidy up around the teeth here, and then we'll get to the white. I think once I start getting the white on, it'll make a huge difference in terms of what it looks like. Wow. Man, it has taken me so long to get to this point. I was thinking about all the time I spent painting my Necron army and building it. Man, I used to have gobs of time. It just doesn't exist anymore. Isn't it great when you're a lot younger, teenagers, don't have house, don't have bills, don't have major commitments, don't have to worry about jobs. Gives you heaps more time to do stuff. Does anybody follow AJ Pickett? His YouTube channel. I saw him put up a picture of somebody riding a beholder, and I was thinking, you know, would you really be riding a beholder? I think a beholder would be riding you. What's that sneaky shot? Lord, I almost remember my teens. Yeah, well, I don't really. I think the only thing I remember is it was a long time ago. Kids got it easy, yes. I wish I had the time I did when I was a kid. Are you follow AJ? Well, I follow AJ because, yeah, well, we're same country. We're not that far away from each other. And he does good stuff, right? But yes, I was thinking, when I saw that drawing that he had done of the beholder mount, I was thinking, I feel like the beholder should be riding the human rather than the other way round. Or at least have a number of humans carrying the beholder on a I don't know, a throne. Now, there's been a few people who have been asking me to do Patreon, and I know it's a little bit frustrating because I have had some people try to send me money, and you can't really do it very easily. And I'm still very reluctant to do Patreon, but I have looked at it, for those of you who are wondering. And I'm definitely not going to do it this year. I might consider it next year, but I honestly don't know. My feeling is that I need to be adding some sort of value, right? If you're going to be a Patreon, there should be some sort of benefit to being a Patreon. Somebody who you know, hands over a few coins, but I still want to be able to just do what I want to do. So that I find very difficult to sort of fathom how I'll make that work. And I was looking at a lot of other pages that people have, and I was like, you know, you don't really get very much. What's the deal? Oh, Minimum Cinnamon, how's it going? I love the name, Minimum Cinnamon. Actually, to be fair, I love the word cinnamon because I like cinnamon, but it's one of the few things I can still have, which is nice. It's just a shame that it's not as sweet as it needs to be. Never mind. Oh dear. Alright, so I think I've got those teeth sort of roughly sort of marked out. Let's get the top one sort of marked out as well, nice and close to the jawline with the grey. Yes. I think when I've finished the Lost Mine of Phandelver, I'm definitely going to do a guide on the Curse of Strahd, because there are so many really cool characters in the Curse of Strahd. I would love to do Out of the Abyss, because I think that's got probably more NPCs that are super interesting compared to anything else. Why does everybody know me? Hey man, we just love the name, man. That's what it is. Everybody knows you. You're famous. There we go. It's not too bad. It's not perfect, but then you're not going to get that from me anyway. Darren, I would feel obliged to do what my patrons wanted and not necessarily what I want to do. Yeah, that's exactly the reason, Darren, why I have avoided doing it. You know, it's part of the reason why you will often find content on my channel which is completely out of the norm of, you know, what you normally see on YouTube. It's because I do stuff like that, and it's because I want to do it, and it's not super popular, but it's there. But yes, which is you've hit it right on the nail. This is very much the reason why I didn't do Patreon. And I was looking at how AJ does his, and you know, a patron can request a subject, so those sorts of things take priority over other things. And yet again, that's another hassle as far as I can see. I'm sorry if you can't see what's going on, it's because I can't see unless I turn the miniature on an angle which allows me to get at it. There. There we go. I feel more like I'm dabbing rather than painting right now. Has anybody had that heard that saying? Don't dab, paint, stroke. I'm just shaking now. Look at that. All right. Okay. It's not looking too bad. What's that, Darren? You go well on my Camel Macho. God, no, it's fun. One of the first videos of yours I watched back when you started was the Player's Handbook repair video. Yeah. That'd be a video that I wish I'd done it much sooner than I did. You have no idea how long it took me to do that. It was over a month. It does seem like ages, yeah. And I did that because my own book fell apart, and I decided, well, bugger it, I'm going to fix my book. I'm going to do it really well, so that Player's Handbook, I still have it. And it's still hung together. It will not fall apart. I don't think it'll ever fall apart. Problem is, the rules in it are sort of getting obsolete and out of date because of all the errata and changes they keep making. But you know, compared to some of the other players that I play with, their books are all falling apart, coming apart. All the first printings, you know, they just didn't hold together. And that's the sort of thing that most people wouldn't even consider asking me to do. And I did that because I knew it was something other people would probably find interesting, and it benefited me. So I'm quite selfish to be honest, about how the content that I produce on my channel. There we go. We've got most of the grey where I want it to be. And I still want to do a whole lot of the other topics that I've talked about. But like anything, I talk about something and then it takes, ages. Probably less time compared to some other channels who essentially, do one video a week because it's a small channel and that's really all they can cope with. And I'm trying to do vastly more than that, which is probably not very sensible. Okay, so I'm just going to hit some of the teeth inside with the grey. Oh, this is the hard bit. And it's not very it's not quite the way I'd hoped, but oh well. Darren, I saw someone had problems with the new Mad Mage book as well. The ink or toner smudged right off the pages when he touched the print. Oh my gosh, really? I'm still waiting on that book, the Mad Mage. I don't know when it's going to show up in New Zealand. Pardon me. This time of year it could be a long way off. And there's nothing you can do to fix that sort of problem. Print that smudges, I mean, what, no way to fix that. How do you solve that problem? I have no idea. I did lots of research on the book binding. Sneaky shot, what's that? Selfish is the best way to keep it interesting. The content we put up has to be fun to make it worth keeping. Yeah, that's right. I do it because it's fun. And this is one of the things I started to realize with my channel is that it's not fun. I'll probably stop doing it. And if I start doing Patreon, it'll start feeling like a job. I've done that before. For those of you who are unaware, I used to be involved in the martial arts. I used to be a self-defense instructor. It was my hobby. And it became a secondary business. And then it stopped being fun, to be honest. Not to mention I was getting too banged up. There's like two types of people who get involved in martial arts. Those who continue right into their later years, and those who get so damaged that they can't continue practicing. And I wound up being one of those who just couldn't continue practicing. Too many injuries. Mostly to the knee, as it happens. And joints don't really fully recover. Once you sort of mess them up, they're sort of done their dash. Surgery's all very well, but they're not as strong as they were. And yeah, so I did that. And what else have I done? That was my hobby that wound up being my job. Carpentry and furniture making and lathe turning wound up being my job, and I stopped doing it as a hobby. I wouldn't mind going back to doing it as a job though. It wouldn't really be a hobby for me anymore, but it would certainly be something I would do as a job. So if I turned Dungeons and Dragons into a job, it's no longer a job. It's no longer, hobby stuff. It's job stuff, right? You've got to worry about, putting food on the table by doing that sort of thing. But we'll see. If I can think of a way of making it work, maybe next year I'll consider it. That will kind of do for now. I think it's time to go to white. An arrow to the leg, yeah. No, well, I did LARPing, but it wasn't an arrow to the leg that caused the problem. And, What's that? For me, it was photography a few years ago, and 1 year reunion of 9 family birthday classes was enough to change my mind. I will never forget that shoot. Oh my gosh, love it. Don't go into huge detail, mate, because it sounds like it probably was a little bit tricky. Okay, so we'll ditch that brush. We'll move to a new brush. Come on, you. Oh, don't you hate it when the bristles on a brush start to separate and you're trying to push them back together and they won't go? Is the brush showing its age? Dear. I have a really big family, so I do understand the complications, particularly around weddings and photos. I don't know about birthdays, but weddings and photos, it can be a little bit troublesome at times. And it's supposed to be a good time, right? But there's always the, got to have a photo with these people, got to have a photo with them. These people don't want to have photos together. Oh dear. Alright. I also realised a lot of the stuff that I want to do is not necessarily going to be super popular at some point. Or ever. And I don't want that to colour my attempt at doing them. Because I'm going to do them anyway. Blah, 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 blah. Right, so that's that side. Let's flip that round. And how do I support it so I can get at it? No. The brush is separating again. Oh no, don't do that. Maybe it's just a bit thick. Let's try that again. Maybe I can thin it down even more. Okay, give it another shot. Too thin, it won't cover and it'll bleed and that'll be bad. I've been watching a lot of people talking about how to deal with making, combats more interesting and so forth, and particularly at high level. I've got a video on that topic, but the simple fact is when it comes to Dungeons and Dragons and making monsters more exciting and more dangerous, you have to change them. You just have to. It just doesn't work. The game is structured in such a way now that your monsters are, if you don't use good tactics and if you don't make adjustments to their powers and their abilities, players will crush them, particularly if they've been playing for some time. And there's nothing you can do about it. When I think about all of the dragon, I've played dragons badly and I've played dragons well. And now when I play a dragon, the dragons never die. And they always mess the party up. And my players always remember dragons, and so before it was like, oh, they're dangerous, we should be careful, but let's try talking and negotiating with it. And what I do is, there's no way the dragon's going to have a conversation where it can be seen. They're talking to a disembodied voice if they're going to try that, and the chances are the dragon's not going to have a conversation until they are on their face and it has the upper hand. So yes, fly, breath weapon, or fly away. Come back another day. Picking up the players, dropping them from high. Certainly a very handy technique if you're using the rock. It's the big bird, right? And yes, you drop somebody off the side of a mountain. That's a lot of damage, and unless they are high level, They probably won't survive the fall. And how do you deal with really high play and making it interesting? You know, I use one page in the Dungeon Master Guide, and that is the Quick Build Monster Guide. And it essentially gives you information on how much damage your monster should be doing at a certain level. And you know what I did? I took that and I upped the number of legendary actions my monsters would have. I upped the number of reactions they had. I upped the number of actions, bonus actions they could take, just the number of things they could do, the sorts of things they could do, but in particular the amount of damage. I just increased the amount of damage, and that makes the big difference in high level play. There's no point doing damage that's less, you know, if you're playing at level 20, there's no point doing less than 100 damage on a player character at that point. Otherwise, you know, a fighter might have 256 hit points, and bumping up AC is all very well, but you're still gonna hit the target, right? And what's that, Darren? Do you have brush soap, Fred? You may have dried paint on the brush ferrule. I do think I do actually. It is separating the bristles, and a good clean with brush soap should fix that. Yeah, that's probably what's going on. I think there is paint down there. I'll have to get some at some point. Anyway, so what was I talking about? So yes, up the damage, and yeah, even with a rogue or a 20th level wizard, 100 points of damage is maybe going to knock them down unconscious. Very unlikely that it will kill them outright. But you've just turned the game from being level 20, where there's huge amounts of damage going on, to the same sort of condition and environment they were used to when they were playing at level 1. And I know that sounds bad, but that's the only way to make it really interesting for combats. Otherwise, skip the combat completely at high level and just go with roleplay, exploration, and a few skill checks, and that's it. There's nothing wrong with doing it that way either. Right. Okay, we're going to come back to that because I feel like that's going to cause me more grief to fiddle around with that now. Actually, I can probably get there though. Sneaky shot. What's this? Agreed. Bump AC, change a spell or an attack, even just tweak a small detail can make an encounter have a different flavor. Yeah. Some of the monsters are pretty boring too, you know. If you change up your monsters and they do different things that are a bit more exciting. Otherwise, it's just bags of hit points and AC, and then a couple of attacks that they make. Whether they be ranged attacks or close up, it doesn't matter. That's all they are. And sometimes I think you've got to add a few things to make them a bit more exciting, so they stand out, other than just being, oh, that monster's worth 50 experience points. We will be able to kill about 6 or 7 of those in about 3 rounds. And that is a medium difficulty encounter. Hate it. Don't like it. Darren. In Dungeon Crawl Classics, the dragons are all custom rolled creatures with varying powers. No two dragons are the same. Wow, yes, I like it. And as they should be. They should be different. I always want my dragon to be one of the main sort of reoccurring villains. And it's very hard for a dragon to be a reoccurring villain if you play them as they are in the monster manual, and you don't have them doing the fly and pick up the adventurers and drop them, or fly and breathe on them. I don't understand why people don't sort of go with that. If you put your dragon in the wrong environment, that'll get them killed as well. But this applies to all, you know, monsters really that you're running in your game, whether it be a dragon or anything else. Yes, the white is certainly bringing out the teeth. It probably needs to be dirtied up at some point, but that's all right. We'll sort that out at some point. It'll all get washed at some point, and I'll focus the washes in different places. I do want to say that this will probably be, as I said, my last painting live stream for December or 2018, and we'll be back into it next year, just because I need a bit of time to do some other stuff, and instead I will replace this with a different video and ditch some of the other videos I've been doing. Okay, alright, so how do I do this without you guys not being able to see what I'm doing, and so I can actually see what I'm doing? Let's get in here. There we go, yeah. I really wanted to use D&D Beyond and rebuild some of the monsters too, you know, sort of go through the process of rebuilding monsters. I don't know when that's going to happen, when I have time, when I've done other things. But I really feel like a Dungeons and Dragons Monster Surgery series is a good idea. I don't know, does anybody here watch HowtoDandD? He takes sort of older monsters and makes modifications to them to make them, you know, sort of fit a theme for his adventure, or fit the theme of the monster, or make them a bit more current. He'll take older monsters and upgrade them to fit Dungeons and Dragons 5e. Have you guys watched his stuff? It's actually quite good. And I think you can access the monsters that he builds on a website. I was watching his stuff today as it happens. Not familiar, what is the name again? It is HowtoDandD. I'm subscribed to his channel. But yes, he's got some cool stuff. And he certainly modifies and changes up the monsters a lot. And he was talking about, what was the one I was watching? It was moss. And this moss, what it does is it steals the thoughts of anybody who's close by, creates more moss, and also steals the powers of wizards. So if they've got prepared spells, it will steal their spells from them and then use their spells against them as a defensive mechanism. And I thought, wow, that's a really cool monster. That's the sort of monster I would definitely want to use in my game. And why not? Too many cool things can happen that way. Alright. Just found the vid? Yeah, that's right. The Oblivix moss. Exactly, that's the one. Super cool monster, I thought. I was watching that just before this live stream as it happens. Anyway. Alright, so I've got a little bit of paint there. I'm going to try to figure out how to get the next angle in. How do I get at this? This is the problem. Maybe that'll work. Maybe that'll work. Flick it round and attack from this angle here. Voila. And I still want to do the random encounters videos. And I still want to do fantastic locations. Never enough time in the day to do all this stuff though. Too many ideas and not enough time. And I don't know how long it's going to take me to do all the class series. It's taken me a long time just to do Wizard, Barbarian, Warlock, Sorcerer. Sometime in the future, far from now, you may see these. Oh dear. Here we go. starting to sort of come together. Stop moving around. He's a roller. Okay. Let's just focus on getting the white teeth sorted. Oh, I wanted to talk too, just briefly, for those of you who don't know, I currently play a sorcerer, a paladin sorcerer, and I'm using wild magic, which, as you know, is probably one of the poorest choices to make with regard to the sorcerer. But I have to say, it has been working out a treat with an adjustment to wild magic surge. It has been super hilarious. It has been the highlight of the game to see what crazy stuff will happen to my character. My character is currently blue, is blowing pink bubbles, can't speak, has shrunk by half the size, so I'm a very small dragonborn now, and we're just waiting for the character to turn into a pot plant or something. I have made sure to ensure that whenever we are doing stuff, I be very careful about what I cast, but most of the time it kicks in when I cast shield. You know, reaction, first level spell, whoop, and it's time to roll, which is not the norm for the class feature, but mate, it's made it so much more entertaining and much more worth doing in the first place by allowing it to happen more often. Okay. What's that? Holy wow, my group would have so much fun with that set of circumstances. Yeah, well, it has been really, really entertaining, and I highly recommend, if you're a dungeon master and somebody decides they want to play a wild mage, that they have to roll every single time they cast a first level spell. And the problem is with Tides of Chaos. So what we've done is, with Tides of Chaos, if I use it, my dungeon master can ask me to roll on the wild magic surge table again, and I can't regain the Tides of Chaos until I've taken a long rest, no matter what. Otherwise I wind up with advantage on too many different things. And yeah, so we use that to counter the fact that I'm rolling on the wild magic surge table so often, particularly if I'm using first level or second level spells. And I'm only level 6, I think it's 6, so that's sort of here. And I've been shocked at how useful Metamagic's subtle spell has been. That has been so useful. Somebody can drop silence, doesn't matter. Suddenly all I can do is blow bubbles and I can't speak, doesn't matter. Subtle spell. Hey, yeah. Otherwise I just wind up turning into a glorified paladin with not enough hit points. We don't actually have a meat shield in the party. We've got a cleric, we've got a bard, we've got a paladin sorcerer, that's me, we've got a druid, and that's about it. And I suppose you could try tanking with a cleric, but it's not such a great idea. What's that? Yeah, subtle spell is pretty great. Fantastic in a situation where you just need to be quiet, but when you just can't speak for a variety of different reasons. I can't count the number of times I've found myself unable to speak because of wild magic surge. It's been numerous times. I have turned into a sheep. The only thing I haven't transformed into is the pot plant. I'm sure that's coming eventually. But yeah, I'll talk more about that some of the time. I just want to make sure that I get the full experience before I start talking as if I know what works and what doesn't with regard to that. But keep you updated. It's working out really well so far. Haha, there we go. It's not too bad. Yeah, the paint is just drying way too fast. Yes, transformed into a sheep. I used a piece of popcorn to represent my character because we didn't have any sheep. So essentially I turned into a piece of popcorn, really. Only problem is I took damage, and then of course it's polymorph spell and sheep don't have many hit points, so I wound up transforming back into my real self. But it was entertaining anyway. Wow. These little teeth are gonna take me hours. Hours and hours. I've almost reached the point where doing painting videos in New Zealand is going to be impractical, and I'll have to shift to doing the crafting miniatures ones, just because of the speed at which paint is drying just too quickly. Oh well, I knew it was coming. Here we go. Oops, you got a nice shot of my my scraggy here. Sorry about that. It'll go out of this shot in a second. I'm just trying to get a better angle on it. I can't really see exactly what I'm doing otherwise. Okay, so I think with the teeth I'm going to leave them alone, because if I keep trying to tackle them, the paint hasn't actually dried on some of them, and you know how it sort of gets gluggy if you don't let it dry properly. What's this? Yeah. Maybe I'll just tackle just a couple more in there, and then I will leave the teeth alone. And that will do. Bam, 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 bam. I've still got all this white though. Squeezed out too much white. Oh, my stomach is saying, you must feed me now. It's making little noises. There. Ah. Always the angle, right? If you just get the right angle, you can get the paint on. Wrong angle, no paint. Okay. Alright. The teeth aren't finished, but they are at least started. You heard my stomach growl. Ugh. Trust me, it was a stomach growl, it was not a fart. No farting, didn't fart, it was a stomach growl. The microphone is certainly very sensitive. It picks up pretty much everything. Ah dear. Okay, so where is this other brush? And just so I can see what I'm up to. Where's my picture? Let's have a look at my pictures. So we went grey. We really need to transfer over to the white. So I went grey, I went brown, grey, and I'm going to go white and really needs to be sort of, do I really want to go white? I don't really want to go white. I want to mix grey into the white so that the grey is lighter. I think that's what I think I need to do, rather than get too funky, because I would prefer to keep it mostly grey. Yeah, yep, that's what we'll do. That'll be the final task for today, is to make sure I get that part sorted out and get the lighter grey on. So, one brush, and my grey, and my white. And we'll add it. And we'll see where we go. Just got to lighten it up a little bit. And a bit more. That's it. And we'll add a little bit of water, since it's thickening up too much. Okay, that seems to be, is that right? Maybe not enough. A little bit more water. Okay, so let's try one location and see what it looks like. And if it looks terrible, then I don't continue. Okay, so let us go with, if I can get enough paint off this brush. There. Can you guys make that out? Is it even noticeable? Might not be. In fact, it might be just blending in too much. Yeah, it's not even, you couldn't even see the difference. I mean, I can't. It's disappeared so quickly. Let's try going more white and less grey. Here we go. Let's try that again. Oh, my brush is splaying. Okay, hang on, let's just sort that out. Come back here. Don't know if you can necessarily make that out, but let's just give this another shot. It's subtle on the screen, but it's good. Okay, barely a difference, but yes, kinda. Yeah, no, it's too subtle. I think the addition of a bit more white has helped. Can you? Yeah, I don't know if you can necessarily see that, but I'll do that again. More water with the white, and that'll thin it down a little bit more. Go and try again. It's really thick now. It's going to bleed. It's really, really subtle, I guess. Maybe too subtle. We'll keep going. And keep working my way up. Working my way up. There we go. Well, it's subtle, but I think it's actually going to work. So I'll keep working with that. It's mostly white, only a little bit of grey. Put it on real thin. And I'm just going to work across like that. Don't paint over all of the grey, because I think you've got to keep some of it, otherwise it's not going to work. Particularly where it's close to the animal's skin. There we go. Man. It's going on all right. Keep going. What's that? Barely a difference, but yes, kinda. Yes, it's more noticeable. Looks good. Got a jet. 8 PM Eastern Standard in the States. Have a good day. Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. Understandable. I've got to take off too at some point. I'm almost done here. It is barely probably noticeable on your screen, but it definitely I'm noticing it enough of a difference here at my end. For those of you who are wondering, so I'm definitely happy with the results so far. And we're going to flick it around that way. Get rid of the water off and paint that's drying on the brush, and we'll give it another shot. Oh. Okay. And now I just got to get the paint moving again. That's the problem. Here we go. Got it. And now working my way up, down, around, somewhere, anywhere. Okay. Bingo. I've got way too many miniatures to paint now. I was looking at what I have that's unpainted, and there's way too many. It's going to take me forever to get to all of them. Never mind. Okay, so if that worked there, I can do that along here as well. And along that ridge. Spiky bit. Less on that side, more on this side. There we go, cool. Reminds me of when I was playing, not Dungeons and Dragons, Warhammer 40k, and I would collect too many miniatures, have too many, I just keep buying stuff. Never had time to paint them all. And you go into the store and your intention was not to buy, but you wound up doing so. There's not a single Games Workshop game store in New Zealand now. They have put themselves out of business in my country as a result of the way they operated. And the only way you can get their stuff is through other stores. There's no Games Workshop at all. Just because of the way they ran their business. It was really, really a shame. Yeah, definitely. I think it is. I think particularly Games Workshop miniatures, it's spreading, are a trap. Because of the nature of what you're doing. And you wind up just buying too much stuff. Okay, alright, there it is. Okay, cool. Let's keep going. Spread again. Let's see if I can water down get the paint flowing. It's going to get lighter and lighter though every time I do this. This is the hassle. Okay, alright, that seems alright. So it looks really dramatic when I put that first stroke. Well, the problem was that they based everything on disposable income. So they assessed disposable income in New Zealand based off what they thought people got in Australia, because they didn't really know what the disposable income of the average person was in New Zealand. And they were so aggressive about their sales pitch that eventually people just stopped going to their store, and they would go and buy everything online, or they would go and see some of the local stores who were doing better deals, such as I think it was Livewire and Vagabonds, but in the end I know my brother, he was buying all of his stuff straight from China rather than even going through, you know, the official stuff, just because their prices were so high, and they were absolute awful in the store. You know, you go in and you didn't know what you're going to deal with. If you were buying heaps of stuff, they were like happy as. But yeah, it didn't work out in the end for them, and they wound up closing down. And there isn't a single Games Workshop store in New Zealand anymore. And that is what happens when you run a business and only think about money rather than and how much money you can make, and base your income pricing off a completely different country. Like, oh my gosh. And it opened it up to other companies who were willing to take a smaller margin to simply put them out of business. Although Games Workshop has this policy where it will tell a business how much they should be charging, but you know, like any business, you don't have to do that, and it's only a matter of time before they just put themselves out of business because of the pricing and the way they operated. I don't know if you guys can see the difference, but I feel like it's definitely working for me in terms of what's going on with the colouring and the grey and the white. Let's just keep going with this. It's working nicely. They price in China is hard to justify for me now too. Yeah, well, that's because they don't look at the cost of them making the product and their markup. Their pricing is based off what they determine to be the disposable income in Canada. Now, I would suspect that because Games Workshop is a bit lazy in terms of how they do their research, they probably suspect that the average disposable income of a Canadian is the same as somebody in the United States, and they will probably price everything based off that. And averages don't mean anything, particularly if you've got part of your population who earn a lot more than everybody else. So therefore, they mean nothing. It's a bad way to price your products. That's my view anyway. Okay, I don't know if you can necessarily see what's going on here, but you probably can't. I can see what's going on, and it's working out really, really nicely. And I'll turn it round so you can see in a second. But it's lightening up, and I think actually there's a point where I should stop going down the creature with the brush and leave those other areas darker. In fact, how about if I do, instead of doing the whole area, I just stroke a corner. Yeah, let's do that. And big flat area there. There we go. That worked. I could do the same thing with those other plates, but my paint is drying out so much. And my brush is going completely bananas. Here we go. Let's do that again. Right. Let's do it. One more stroke. Actually, if I just squeeze, can I get just a tiny bit of white out? Yep, that'll do it. And then add some of the grey over here. And a bit of white, and water it down. So I've made it so watery that it's a little bit sort of see-through for those of you who are wondering. And I think that's actually helped quite a lot. I don't know if this is necessarily going to be watered down enough though. It feels like it's way too white compared to what I had before. Okay, let's give it another shot. Down this way. That might be too much. It's not really drying the way the other ones were. Everything else worked out really kind of rather nicely, but that one's just, that might be just too aggressive. Yes. What do? Do I pursue it? Do I go with it, or do I leave it? It looks kind of white rather than what I had before. Let's add grey and thin. Sorry guys, just making adjustments. Yes, I'm not really too sure what I'm going to do with that little section of it. It's I don't really want it to be quite as white as that. I want it to be a lot thinner. And right now, it's not really what I want. There we go. I think I'm back. Okay, alright, let's see if we can't work our way down the creature. And these plates here, see, this looks terrible here. I know I've got really quiet, but it's kind of tricky. Okay, and then under here, what's this going to look like? Oh, I don't know if I like that at all. I might wind up painting all over that, back over that. I'm only going to know when it dries what sort of effect it has. Yeah. Okay, alright, you've got to know when to quit, right? And I think that's a good point to quit at. Work too much on it and wind up just making a mess. I think it's an improvement. I certainly think the grey is not white, and the teeth, I'll have to go back over the teeth and do a bit more work on them. But look, yeah, that'll be it for me for today. I will be back. It's looking good after, yeah, I think it'll look a lot better after a wash. You know, once I wash this thing and just tidy up around the rocks a little bit, and there's a few places where I sort of messed up the paint job, and oh, hang on, I'll bring it down. Sorry guys, I do apologize. If I do that, then it'll probably make a huge difference. It's not all the detail is complete yet, but it's looking a lot more like what I'd hoped it would look like, rather than sort of just a purple worm with some white sort of spikes on it and some teeth. Turned out better than I thought it would, to be honest. And no doubt I could do a lot of highlighting on the skin area, but not really much point in doing that until it's been washed, I'd imagine. But look, yeah, this will be my last painting live stream video for 2018. We'll be back in 2019. So if you like this sort of thing, please share and like it, and then come back in a month and we'll be back into it, probably making videos rather than making miniatures rather than painting miniatures, because the weather will just get too hot for that sort of thing. Yeah, so share and like the video, subscribe to my channel if you haven't subscribed, hit the bell button to be notified when I go live. If you want to support my channel, you supported me by watching this very long video, or even part of it. I have many more videos, you're welcome to go and watch them. I don't do Patreon, but I might do it in 2019, who knows. I have affiliate links to the Book Depository and Amazon that support the channel, so I keep making videos, so you're welcome to use them down below if you want to. And look, that's it from me, and hey, till next time, keep rolling those 20s. And obviously you're wanting to roll really, really well on the 20. So get the actual 20. Don't roll a 1 or a 2 or something horrible like that. Roll a decent number. And I will see you next time.